Hi there, Chapter 51, Odd Thomas. When we left Odd, he had just escaped from Bob Robertson's house where he had been searching to try to find some clues as to his collaborator. And Bob Robertson's spirit had shown up and gone like full poltergeist mode. So Odd escaped before he got severely injured by the things flying through the air. So here we go, Chapter 51. At the convenience store where I purchased the No-Dos and the Pepsi, I bought another cola, Bactine, and a package of large patch Band-Aids. The cashier, a man with a face made for astonishment, put aside the sports section of the Los Angeles Times and said, "Hey, you're bleeding." Being polite is not the only right way to respond to people, but also the easiest. Life is so filled with unavoidable conflict that I see no reason to promote more confrontations. At that moment, however, I happened to be in a rare bad mood. Time was flushing away at a frightening rate, the hour of the gun rapidly drawing near, and I still had no name to hang on Robertson's collaborator. "Do you know you're bleeding?" he asked. I had a suspicion. "That looks nasty." "My apologies." "What happened to your forehead?" "A fork." "A fork?" "Yes, sir. I wish I'd been eating with a spoon." "You stabbed yourself with a fork?" "It flipped." "Flipped?" "The fork." "A flipped fork?" "It flicked my forehead." Pausing in the counting of my change, he gave me a narrow look. "That's right," I said. "A flipped fork flicked my forehead." He decided not to have any further involvement with me. He gave me my change, bagged the items, and returned to the sports pages. In the men's room at the service station next door, I washed my bloody face, cleaned the wound, treated it with Bactine, and applied a compress of paper towels. The punctures and scratches were shallow, and the bleeding soon stopped. This wasn't the first time, nor the last, that I wished my supernatural gift included the power to heal. Band-Aid applied, I returned to the Chevy. Sitting behind the wheel, engine running, air conditioning vents aimed at my face, I chugged cold Pepsi. Only bad news on my wristwatch. It's 10:48. My muscles ached, my eyes were sore. I felt tired, weak. Maybe my wits hadn't shifted into low gear as they seemed to have, but I didn't like my chances if I had to go one-on-one with Robertson's kill buddy, who must have enjoyed a better night's sleep than I had. I'd taken 2 caffeine tablets no more than an hour ago, so I couldn't justify swilling down 2 more. Besides, already the acid in my stomach had scoured into a corrosive strength sufficient to etch steel, and I had grown simultaneously exhausted and jumpy, which is not a condition conducive to survival. Although I had no person, no name, no description, as a focus for my psychic magnetism, I drove at random through Pico Mundo, hoping to be brought to a place of enlightenment. The brilliant Mojave day burned at white-hot ferocity. The air itself seemed to be on fire, as if the sun, by speed of light, less than 8.5 minutes from Earth, had gone nova 8 minutes ago, giving us nothing more than this dazzling glare as a short warning of our impending bright death. Each flare and flicker of light flashing off the windshield seemed to score my eyes. I hadn't brought my sunglasses. The searing glare soon spawned a headache that made a fork in the brow seem like a tickle by comparison. Turning aimlessly from street to street, trusting intuition to guide me, I found myself in Shady Ranch, one of the newer residential developments on the Pico Mundo Hills that a decade ago were home to nothing more dangerous than rattlesnakes. Now people lived here, and perhaps one of them was a sociopathic monster plotting mass murder in upper-middle-class suburban comfort. Shady Ranch had never been a ranch of any kind. It wasn't one now, unless you counted houses as a crop. As for shade, these hills enjoyed less of it than most neighborhoods in the heart of town because the trees were far from maturity. I parked in my father's driveway, but didn't at once switch off the engine. I needed time to gather my nerve for this encounter. Like those who lived in it, this Mediterranean-style house had little character. Below the red tile roof, ornament-free planes of beige stucco and glass met at unsurprising angles, arrived at less by architectural genius than by the dictates of lot size and shape. Leaning closer to a dashboard vent, I closed my eyes against the rush of chilled air. Ghost lights drifted across the backs of my eyelids, retinal memories of the desert glare, strangely soothing for a moment, until the wound in Robertson's chest rose from deeper memory. I switched off the engine, got out of the car, went to the house, and rang my father's doorbell. At this hour in the morning, he was likely to be home. He had never worked a day in his life and seldom rose before 9 or 10 o'clock. My father answered, surprised to see me. Odd, you didn't call to say you were coming. No, I agreed. I didn't call. My father is 45, a handsome man with thick hair, still more black than silver. He has a lean, athletic body, of which he is proud to the point of vanity. Barefoot, he wore only khaki shorts, slung low across his hips. His tan had been assiduously cultivated with oils, enhanced with toners, preserved with lotions. Why have you come? He asks. I don't know. You don't look well. He retreated one step from the door. He fears illness. I'm not sick, I assured him, just bone tired. No sleep. May I come in? We weren't doing much, just finishing breakfast, getting ready to catch some rays. Whether that was an invitation or not, I interpreted it as one, and I crossed the threshold, pulling the door shut behind me. Brittany's in the kitchen, he said, and led me to the back of the house. The blinds were drawn, the rooms layered with sumptuous shadows. I've seen the place in better light. It's beautifully furnished. My father has style and loves comfort. He inherited a substantial trust fund. A generous monthly check supports a lifestyle that many would envy. Although he has much, he yearns for more. He desires to live far better than he does, and he chafes at terms of the trust that require him to live on its earnings and forbid him access to the principal. His parents had been wise to settle their estate on him under those terms. If he had been able to get his hands on the principal, he would long ago have been destitute and homeless. He is full of get-rich-quick schemes, the latest being the sale of land on the moon. Were he able to manage his own fortune, he would be impatient with a 10 or 15% return on investment and would plunge great sums on unlikely ventures in hopes of doubling and tripling his money overnight. The kitchen is big, with restaurant-quality equipment and every imaginable culinary tool and gadget, though he eats out 6 or 7 nights a week. Maple floor, ship-style maple cabinets with rounded corners, granite counters, and stainless steel appliances contribute to a sleek and yet inviting ambience. Brittany is sleek as well, and inviting in a way that makes your skin crawl. When we entered the kitchen, she was standing hip-shot at a window, sipping a morning champagne and staring out at sun serpents sinuously flexing across the surface of the swimming pool. Her thong bikini was small enough to excite the jaded editors of Hustler, but she wore it well enough to make the cover of Sports Illustrated swimsuit issue. She was 18 but looked younger. This is my father's basic criterion in women. They are never older than 20, and they always look younger than they are. Some years ago, he got in trouble for cohabitating with a 16-year-old. He claimed to be unaware of her true age. An expensive attorney plus payoffs to the girl and her parents spared him the indignity of a prison pallor and jail haircuts. Instead of a greeting, Brittany gave me a sullen, dismissive look. She returned her attention to the sun-dappled swimming pool. She resents me because she thinks my father might give me money that would otherwise be spent on her. This concern has no validity. He would never offer me a buck, and I would never take it. She would be better advised to worry about 2 facts. First, that she has been with my father for 5 months. Second, that the average duration of one of his affairs is 6 to 9 months. With a 19th birthday looming, she would soon seem old to him. Fresh coffee had been brewed. I asked for a cup, poured it myself, and sat on a bar stool at the kitchen island. Always restless in my company, my father moved around the room, rinsing out Brittany's champagne glass when she finished with it, wiping a counter that didn't need to be wiped, straightening the chairs at the breakfast table. I'm getting married on Saturday, I said. This surprised him. He'd been married to my mother only briefly and regretted it within hours of exchanging vows. Marriage doesn't suit him. To that Llewellyn girl, he asked. Yes. Is that a good idea? It's the best idea I've ever had. Brittany turned away from the window to study me with beady-eyed speculation. To her, a wedding meant a gift, a parental boon, and she was prepared to defend her interests. She didn't stir in me the slightest anger. She saddened me, for I could see her deeply unhappy future without need of any sixth sense. Admittedly, she scared me a little, too, because she was moody and quick to anger. Worse, the purity and the intensity of her self-esteem ensured that she would never doubt herself, that she could not conceive of suffering unpleasant consequences for any act that she might commit. My father likes moody women, in whom a perpetually simmering anger lies just beneath the surface. The more clearly that their moodiness indicates genuine psychological disorder, the more they excite him. Sex without danger does not appeal to him. All of his lovers have fit this profile. He doesn't appear to spend much effort seeking them. As if sensing his need, drawn by vibes or pheromones, they find him with dependable regularity. He once told me that the moodier a woman is, the hotter she will prove to be in bed. This was fatherly advice that I could have lived without. Now, as I poured coffee into a gutful of Pepsi, he said, "Is this a Welling girl knocked up?" "No." "You're too young for marriage," he said. "My age, that's when it's time to settle down." He said this for Brittany's benefit. He would never marry her. Later, she would remember this as a promise. When he ditched her, the fight would be more epic than Godzilla versus Mothra. Sooner or later, one of his hotties, during a bad mood swing, will maim or kill him. I believe that on some deep level, even if subconsciously he knows this. "What's that on your forehead?" Brittany asked. "Band-Aid." "You fall down drunk or something?" "Something." "You in a fight?" "No, it's an employment-related fork wound." "A what?" "A flicked fork flicked my forehead." Alliteration seems to offend people. Her expression soured. "What kind of shit are you on?" "I'm fully amped on caffeine," I admitted. "Caffeine my ass." "Pepsi and coffee and no-dos. And chocolate. Chocolate contains caffeine. I had some chocolate chip cookies. Chocolate donuts." My father said, "Saturday's not good. We can't make Saturday. We've got other plans we can't cancel." "That's all right," I said. "I understand." "I wish you'd have told us earlier." "No problem. I didn't expect you'd be able to make it." "What kind of dork," Brittany wondered, announces his wedding just 3 days before the ceremony? "Go easy," my father advised her. Her psychological engine didn't have such a go-easy gear. "Well, damn it, he's such a freak." "That's really not helpful," my father admonished her, but in a honeyed tone. "Well, it's true," she insisted. "Like we haven't talked about it maybe 3 dozen times. He doesn't have a car. He lives in a garage. Above a garage," I corrected. "He wears the same thing every day. He's friends with every loser geek in town. He's a wannabe cop like a water boy hanging around a football team. And he's just a major freak." "You won't get an argument from me," I said. "Such a major freak, the way he comes in here on some shit or other, talking about weddings and employment-related fork wounds. Give me a break." "I'm a freak," I said sincerely. "I acknowledge it, accept it. There's no reason to argue. Peace." My father couldn't quite fake a convincing note of sincerity when he said, "Don't say that. You're not a freak." He doesn't know about my supernatural gift. At the age of 7, when my previously weak and inconstant sixth sense grew in power and reliability, I didn't go to him for counsel. I hid my difference from him in part because I expected him to harass me into picking winning lottery numbers, which I can't do. I figured he'd parade me before the media, parlay my gift into a TV show, or even sell shares in me to speculators willing to finance an infomercial and a psychic by the minute 900 number. Getting off the stool, I said, "I think now maybe I know why I came here." As I started toward the kitchen door, my father followed me. "I really wish you'd picked another Saturday." Turning to face him, I said, "I think I came here because I was afraid to go to my mother." Brittany stepped behind my father, pressed her nearly naked body against him. She put her arms around him, hands flat on his chest. He made no attempt to pull away from her. There's something I'm blocking on," I said, more to myself than either of them. "Something I desperately need to know, or need to do, and somehow, some way, it's related to Mother. Somehow she has the answer." "Answers?" he said incredulously. "You know perfectly well that your mother's about the last place to find answers." Smiling wickedly at me over my father's left shoulder, Brittany slid her hand slowly up and down his muscled chest and drummed flat belly. "Sit down," my father said. "I'll pour you another coffee. If you have a problem you need to talk about, then let's talk." Brittany's right hand moved low on his belly, fingertips teasing under the waistband of his hip-slung shorts. He wanted me to see the desire that he inspired in this lush young woman. He had a weak man's pride in his status as a stud, and this pride was so fierce that it filled his mind, leaving him quite incapable of recognizing his son's humiliation. "Yesterday was the anniversary of Gladys Presley's death," I said. "Her son wept uncontrollably for days after losing her, and he grieved openly for a year." A faint frown made the shallowest of furrows in my father's Botoxed forehead. Brittany was too engrossed in her game to be listening to me with full attention. Her eyes glittered with what might have been mockery or triumph as her right hand slowly slipped deeper into his khaki shorts. He loved his dad too. Tomorrow is the anniversary of Elvis's own death. I think I'll try to look him up and tell him how lucky he was from the very day he was born. I walked out of the kitchen, out of the house. He didn't come after me. I hadn't expected that he would. All right, that was chapter 51. See you next time.